We're kicked off here. So welcome everybody back to another Share Your Experience episode here. And Matthew, one of the conscious agents here at Reality Sandwich, and I'm enthusiastic to be joined by Stephanie, who is the founder of Empathogenics, and she's excited to share some of her experience with a lesser known plant medicine, at least at the moment, Kanna. And I'm gonna kick it over to Stephanie and just kind of ask to start with a little bit of background on maybe where you discovered Kanna and kind of how it became a thing in your life, and start to maybe talk about a little bit about either the first experience that you had or any particular experience that really resonates that that you want to share with the community.
Sure. Well, thank you, Matthew, for having me on the show. Wow, I'm just looking back. It's probably 11 years ago is when I had my very first plant medicine experience and ceremony. And it was actually with Kanna, not with any other psychedelic plants. And so that was super special because I actually didn't even know it. I didn't even know really until later what I actually was taking. But it left an indelible imprint because my experience during that first time, really not knowing anything about plant medicine, maybe except for cannabis, right? But nothing besides that. And I have to say that experience was so profound. I had never felt so heart opened, so filled with love before. And, it wasn't just like a sort of in situ love. It was just a feeling of love for everything and everyone in the universe and feeling that oneness. And also, of course, having no thoughts of anything negative or stressful. I mean, there really was no stress. And being able to connect, very authentically, heart to heart with people who were there, who were having the same experience. And it was beautiful because nobody, there were no thoughts of, oh, what does this person do for a living? Or, why are they here? It was all the judgment, all the masks were, that was gone. And what was left was this really authentic connection experience. And also feeling as being part of this immense sort of fabric of love that is the universe. And so, after that experience, it was very hard to forget. And then I realized that was actually Kanna that I had taken. And so from that moment on, I worked a lot with Kanna personally for my own healing journey. And, it really helped me open up much more deeply into love. I probably had quite a big issue with being able to open up with intimacy, related. And it was really life-changing for me. Besides that, what Kanna does is it helps you feel completely held and accepted, and you feel that deep sense of belonging and acceptance. And that in itself is very, very healing. So within that holding by this amazing plant medicine, you can actually process a lot of the feelings, maybe things that you really didn't have the courage to feel, that, feelings that have been suppressed that had to do with traumatic experiences, or, anything that you just felt was kind of icky, you didn't want to deal with it. This was a very safe space is what this plant creates. And I was actually able to really confront a lot of these feelings and process them, more importantly. And then beyond that, integrate them. So that was my experience and had been my experience, using and taking Kanna for many, many, many times since that first experience 11 years ago. And ultimately, what it really inspired in me was that I kept feeling this is exactly what the world needs. We're so in our heads most of the time. We're very intellectually smart, but we often lack the head-heart connection. So we don't have enough compassion, or we lack empathy in our decision-making, or we don't really utilize the intelligence that is the heart, that isn't exactly like your intuition, but is a big part of it. And it's, I think being able to really access that part of us means not being disassociated from our feelings as well. So all of this is related, right? And as I mentioned before, Kanna is just such a beautiful plant because it just holds space for us to process all these emotions. And still, through this process, being able to feel accepted and to belong is absolutely, amazing. And so I really wanted to create something. I was really inspired at that moment to make a product that could be more accessible to people so that they didn't have to do a Kanna ceremony to really experience this healing. And, could I even do that? So about 5 years ago is when I started doing, research with our chief scientist and kind of figuring out and learning more about the science and the studies behind this plant. So what I described was almost a spiritual experience and an emotional experience, but then what underlies that, right? So looking into the science was really interesting, and then realizing Kanna was actually, and is actually, of course, an SSRI, a natural serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and also natural serotonin releasing agent, among many things. And there's, amazing studies on how Kanna actually helps with cognitive function, memory and focus, creativity and productivity, and how it just helps to lower anxiety and stress. And, all of this came as an afterthought after that initial amazing experience. And as you know, I'm sure it's like, it's those, you can be intellectual about something, but when you have, this sort of massive experience, that is what gets really ingrained in you.
Yeah, it's the way that I've almost felt it or described it during kind of the ceremonial setting is it's all these things that in your head, things that you've told yourself for years. And all of a sudden there is this deep, deep fundamental understanding that you're like, I knew this, it's, right. It might not be something totally new or novel, but I didn't fully understand it. I didn't have this deep, resonance with this idea, that I now, it's this, I get, it all makes sense,
Or you didn't give your space to do it. You could have maybe,
True.
But we're so busy, right? And taking a pause and actually being in ceremony is for me, always feels like a vacation, even though that journey may be hard, but it's like, oh my God, I can actually just be and just experience whatever is coming up. But I love what you just said. It's so true, that just allowing feelings to come up, to be integrated, to be processed and understood and integrated. And I think that's another big gift about Kanna is that it's a great tool for integration. It slows you down enough and it connects you to that deep knowing within you. And so that you actually listen to yourself. And, what comes up is a lot of deep insight often.
What was that initial ceremonial experience like? If we could jump back there for a couple moments, just kind of curious what the set and setting were like there, and kind of what the full ceremonial experience was like. And my notion of that is, in a certain vertical, but curious what that was like for you with Kanna.
Yeah, I wonder if ours are similar. So. It took place in a loft in Tribeca, and there were about, I want to say 30 people. And, it was a massive loft, which was lovely. And there was a shaman, a Peruvian shaman, and he came and, he sort of gave a little lecture first about what the cosmology was for this plant. And it's heart medicine, right? So it's meaning it helps bring us into consciousness, not through spirit, but through the heart. So it actually keeps you in the body. And I thought that was really fascinating. And because it's, for example, psilocybin and ayahuasca are spirit medicines. So they bring you to consciousness through spirit. So it takes you out of body. Whereas this one actually brings you really present in through the heart. So, after listening to this, we were each sort of given this medicine. And beforehand, I'm trying to think, did we set intentions? I think we did. I don't really remember. Afterwards, I know we always did. I know if the first one we did. But that is generally really important because you're activating the medicine, right? And I believe at least I did. Um, so just activating that by, you know, coming into relationship with whatever it is that we're taking to our bodies, and I set an intention and just took it, and I had no idea what to expect. So I was just chatting with people. It wasn't a formal setting where we were sitting by ourselves or anything. So, yeah. And then it kicked in. I really could feel it by about 45 minutes. And it was really strong and it was beautiful. And I have to say, what was also interesting for me during the ceremonial experience with Kanna was that I could actually hear people's thoughts. It was awesome. And I just knew, like, it's like this weird telepathic ability, right? And I guess this is part of the oneness of the field. But if I was with someone, I automatically knew before they were asking a question what they would ask, and I would have already answered, and it would freak people out. But like, that was really cool. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. It was a telepathic experience live. But mostly it was just this very warm, heart opening experience. And there were a lot of hugs. There were a lot of exchanges, communication, conversations between people, between myself and others that were quite intimate. We were just chatting about life. But then what was also noticeable was that, it was a field, a group energy of 30 people, that oftentimes the intention that was set, if it was a question, let's say, somebody would say something and it was really relevant, maybe for somebody else to hear, or that, I might be inspired to go to someone and ask them about their mother or something, just totally random. And it's exactly what they needed and wanted to talk about. Or I would share an experience, or someone would share an experience for me, and it was exactly the learning or the teaching that I needed to receive. So there was a lot of this cross communication within this container, within the safe container that we created. And I think that's also important to mention, which I didn't mention. We were told strictly to stay in that space, obviously not to wander off by ourselves unaccompanied. And there was a facilitator there as well, and people helping somebody who maybe needed help to go to the bathroom or something. But it was very connective, and that was really, really beautiful. I was feeling like, wow, this is a human tribe. This is how we should be all the time.
That's very interesting. Yeah, very, very similar ceremonial experience. The idea of one of our recent guests had mentioned unity consciousness as a concept, and totally resonated and totally resonates now as well, where everyone in the container is, you feel this odd sense of unity and oneness and connectivity between everybody in that way. And yeah, that's really, really interesting how similar and in sync the ceremonial settings are. Was the dosage that you guys took like a heavier dosage than maybe you would, like a normal person would take for Ka?
Oh my God, Ka is not a ceremonial dose. So Ka is a daily dose. So it's not meant to be ceremonial dose at all. So yes, when we were taking ceremonial Ka was ceremonial Kanna, it was a lot higher.
And it's interesting you'd mentioned the heart medicine versus the spirit medicine, and I know that when we've previously talked about kind of Kanna, it's psychoactive versus psychedelic, is part of the frame of reference. I really like the frame of reference of the heart medicine versus spirit medicine. I think that, at least kind of in my again, probably limited experience with Kanna and testing out with Ka, it's probably a really good way to describe it. As an in-body experience that is still very similar, but just in a different lane, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think we do Kanna a disservice by comparing it to, let's say, in a way like where people go, well, it's not, I don't get the visuals. It's not as powerful as, let's say, ayahuasca or something else like that. Or, people like to compare it to MDMA, and then they're like, oh, no. I mean, I could go into that as well in a second, but I think it's an important point. There's an important point to make. Kanna is very much its own plant. It's really not like, anything else. Okay, fine. It's empathogenic. It opens the heart, in a way similar. That's, I would say, the main similarity between that and MDMA. Although with MDMA, it's a lot more, noticeable. It's a lot more extreme in that sense. But, Kanna is a subtle plant medicine. And the subtlety is its power, actually, because it's actually inviting you to come into a relationship with it. And I actually just came back from a 3-week trip to South Africa and Namibia, talking and finding the indigenous elders, the Khoi and the San and Bushman elders who still have, who still have the knowledge and the wisdom of this particular plant. They are the indigenous stewards of Kanna in that region, from that region. And even they say, it's like, it's not what you think. Like the Westerners think, oh, it helps with anxiety and stress and it lifts mood. Absolutely. It gives energy. Absolutely. But there's so much more to this amazing plant, and that you have to have patience to cultivate a relationship. And of course, some people give up and they're like, oh, I don't really feel it or whatever. And there's several reasons for that, because sometimes it also has to do with the kind of Kanna that you're taking, or that you're buying, because not all Kanna is created equal. And if you don't have a reputable supplier or a vendor, and you're getting it from someone who, really isn't using the right kind of Kanna, and maybe the alkaloid content isn't as high and the quality isn't as good, you're going to have a very different, experience. And by the way, Kanna in the wild varies enormously in terms of its alkaloid content. So you might have Kanna in the wild and it's like, oh, it's nothing. And then you might take another bite of literally another plant next to it, and you're just having like a massive experience. So it's really interesting that way. And one of the other things is that the patience part is important, because subtle does not mean, disempowered. Subtle actually is very, very powerful, because it does not confront your ego where you have a lot of defenses. All of us do. Right. So sometimes with bigger experiences, your ego is on alert, and it's just like, oh my God, don't come here, and it's danger, and you run away. Whereas when you have subtle plant medicines or anything that you microdose, for example, what's the beauty of that is that you have that sort of below the ego's radar kind of effect happening every day. And there's a cumulative effect. And that effect can be profound over time. If you have a little bit of change every day leads to an enormous transformation, right, at the end. So I just wanted to say this about Kanna, because, it's important to make that distinction. And of course, compared to MDMA, it's very different in the sense that it doesn't have amphetamines. So it's not speedy the way that MDMA is. And it also is neuroprotective, which many people don't realize. And it's adaptogenic, which even fewer people realize. So what that means is there's no toxicity. It's safe to take, every day. And that's how the indigenous would take it, traditionally. And it's adaptogenic, meaning that it actually helps regulate your nervous system over time, so that it builds your emotional resilience. It builds your physical resilience as well. And of course, it was used also by the indigenous when they went on multi-day hunts, because of its ability to give them energy, suppress hunger and thirst, and also help them focus, right, in their hunt, and help with, helping with their fatigue as well. So this is an amazing plant that also helps with stamina and endurance. And another beautiful way to take Kanna is for intimate moments, right? Whether it's intimate moments with friends or family, maybe you're having a deep conversation, maybe, there's some conflict that you want to resolve with each other, and it actually really helps to take that. And by the way, the indigenous Khoi and San also would do that when they went into negotiations with like a rival tribe or something. So, there's all these amazing ways. And then of course with your partner, it's also beautiful because it brings that level of intimacy into sex, right? And it opens you up to be more vulnerable. And and so it's just, there's so many dimensions to this plant and how to incorporate it into our lives.
What was the 3 weeks like? Your recent 3 weeks in South Africa and Namibia. Any just kind of fun experiences to share from there, or insights? And I mean, I just want to explore on that for a couple minutes.
Yeah, I spent 2 weeks with Bushman Pete Berense, who was quite well known in the region. He was actually in the movie Gods Must Be Crazy too, and he is an amazing activist. He is super authentic guy. And I learned a lot just being with him. And, we spent actually a couple of days in the bush with the Bushmen. And that was pretty hardcore. It was really, really fun. But I think that the biggest takeaway is, when you're with people who are still connected with the land and and their understanding of nature, right? They could, we went on bushwalks with them and they're showing us, it looks like there's no food, there's nothing anywhere. If someone left me there, I would definitely die, and it was just incredible just showing us, where there was food and water and how to find it. And their way of living, is just beautiful. And even though I was only in the bush spending 2 nights with them, it kind of changed me. And this whole trip really transformed me in the sense that, I talk a lot about how, for example, Kanna is the connector, right? It's a heart-opening plant. It's beautiful, helps you connect with yourself, others, and nature. And there you could really, because I was with, in the native land of Kanna, you could really feel and see what that really meant. And that's what it does. It's amazing. And the people and the Bushmen were just, I think one of the other things that really struck me is they are so incredibly welcoming, it's so incredibly open-hearted and loving. And I would say more open-hearted than pretty much anybody that I would have met the first time. And this is despite the fact that they have been, mistreated. They often, they're not even allowed to hunt. The Bushmen are the San, and that's part of their culture. And they don't get enough food because they're not allowed to hunt on land that was given to them because their land was taken away. And they starve because of that. And they have to find other ways to make a living. And they struggle to keep this traditional knowledge and wisdom alive. And so, for example, Bushman Pete, his dream is to build a field school, which is a place where he can welcome anybody from any background to go and learn a lot of these skills that have to do with connecting to nature and learning how to survive, but it's not about like, oh, let me teach you some survival skills. It's also learning about medicines, right? It's learning about plants. It's learning about animals, right? And how, it's amazing. He'll know by tasting, let's say, certain meat, whether that animal is healthy, pregnant, old, or young. It's amazing, right? And so, sometimes, because we had some food together, and he's like, "I'm not having this." I go, "Why?" He goes, "This animal is not healthy. I'm not going to take that," right? And for most of us, it's like, "What are you talking about?" Right? And so it's those skills are just incredible, and this is what they have to share and what they have to give to the world is immense. And the sad thing is that, of course, a lot of this knowledge is disappearing because the elders are dying off. And so preserving this is really important. And I really want to mention this because often in psychedelic circles, especially I'm talking about plant medicine psychedelics, there isn't enough. It's very sort of whitewashed in terms of talking about the indigenous or how they are part of this whole process, they're often ignored more often than not. And even if they are included, it's just kind of just lip service, and it's not really anything substantial. And all I have to say is that, anybody I feel who is in this business, who is in business of plant medicines, that, have to be aware of who the traditional stewards are. And it is part of our responsibility to really understand this and to see how we can work together and collaborate together, because 99 out of 100 times these people have been, driven out of their lands. They have, they're struggling just to keep everything that, keep sustaining, keep their culture alive. And there's just so much richness there that is our inheritance as well, just being part of a global family. And again, I know most people maybe don't look at it this way, but so much of the healing of the medicine, believe it or not, also comes from the indigenous stewards who have been custodians of it. And when you come into a relationship with them, you actually get the missing pieces. And those pieces are not sort of just some fancy alkaloid. Alkaloids are part of it, but it's actually the human interaction, and it's the wisdom that they share that is the medicine itself. And connecting with them, I swear to God, like ignites something in you, because you're starting to build that connection to the ancient. And in particular, the Bushmen are the first people, literally, of Africa. So, that's incredible, right? And we all, way, 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 way back, all came from Africa as well. So sorry for this long diatribe about the indigenous, but I just think it's really important to talk about.
Absolutely. And I, even just to spin off and to bring it back to something that you said earlier that I totally vibe with as well, is the idea that, you've got a container or a collective or a family or a tribe, and how powerful that is. And, comparing just, kind of the trajectory of humanity, where you still got, again, very blanket statement, but, bucketing the indigenous, in Africa, and, seeing how, the efforts of European colonialism in Africa, drawing border lines and how that doesn't work, and kind of pinpointing why. And it's, again, in my opinion, it's because you're forcing, these smaller tribes to, to all come under one umbrella. And that, just isn't the answer. We think it's the answer in, maybe the United States to, there's going to be one federal government and one law that's going to rule 350 million people. And that is, to me, pretty ludicrous. It's there, I could see that there's a doctrine or, something that can, that 30 people can all get behind and follow. And again, you kind of see that in ceremonial setting where, everyone's like, all right, we're all in this here together. And you see the power and the energy of that, and how, even a little bit in my background on just kind of seeing all the different sects within like the Christianity and kind of the religious sects there, where, the grassroots movements are incredibly beautiful. There's an incredible heart in, different house church movements. And, when you've got 15 or 20 people that are, passionate and moving in the same direction, and then there's some kind of breaking point, and of course it gets to a big mega church where it's like, oh, now you've got, this doctrine that everyone is believing this one person, usually this one white guy. And, there's somewhere along that line that it breaks. And, I think that's what I see as, part of, what we're losing is, that connectivity of, 20 or 30 people that can have a lot of power. And I think at least for me, being in those ceremonial settings, like just resets that. And is, as you mentioned, it does kind of feel like a vacation. It feels like like you're released from being in, the traditional perception of reality that we've all now come to create as our normal. It's like, all right, now I can be in, this other normal that is who I should be, for a period of time.
And you've been given
that
permission
into regular
to have
life.
that space for yourself, right? So
Yep.
good.
Yep. So maybe a few closing remarks that I'd be curious on is, maybe just some integration experiences, overall, just, I think maybe, some of the ways that you started to integrate after the first powerful experience, and then, just even, some day-to-day integration techniques that you still rely on, call it 11 years later, whether that's, again, kind of a daily Kanna routine, or, things like, again, not to put words in your mouth, but like, things like breath work or journaling, or, things like that you found to really help integrate your initial experience and just kind of ongoing.
One thing that really shifted me from this trip, this recent African trip, is because they talk a lot about ancestors, right? And again, back to the whole idea of connection and integration they're actually really related. So when you work with plant medicines, you are intentionally, right, taking in something that usually you add an intention to. So you're working with it, right? You're listening, you're listening to yourself, you're listening to the plant, and you're having this dance. And then afterwards, as that container, everybody leaves, after however many hours, the next day, you do have your integration session and you go away. And for me with Kanna always spoke to me. This is why the patience with this medicine is important, actually, to take it consistently, which I had been. It just keeps revealing, right? And it usually, I'll give you an example that was really powerful. There was one night that I was doing ceremony, and it wasn't like a particularly great ceremony compared to the others where I really had like a lot of bliss, or I had all these insights and this guidance that I thought, I felt that I got. It was kind of like, right? But one question did come up, and it was brought up by my partner at the time. And he actually asked, he goes, Stephanie, why is it so hard for you to, wait, what did he say? What is it that you don't trust? Because you're not a trusting person. What is it that you don't trust? So, and then, we did a Socratic thing. We went back and forth. And I kept giving answers. And it was like, nope, that's not it. Go deeper. Nope, that's not it. Go deeper. And this went on for quite some time. And I was exhausted. And this is like 3:00 in the morning. I was like, I have to go to bed. And the next day, and I was like, I'm sorry. That's it. And the next day I woke up and I was thinking about what happened the night before, and I got the answer, right? And that answer was, my issue wasn't that I didn't trust men, or I didn't trust this person or that person or whatever. It was that I didn't trust love itself. And that was so, so profound, because that's everything, right? We were just talking about this. If you don't trust in love, how can you just don't trust in life? So when I had that awakening, that moment of realization, that then took me into journaling. It was like, oh my God, my mind was blown, right? Which was good. And then I really had to kind of dive in. It's like, okay, well, that's why. And then I was like, oh my God, that's why this happened. And I didn't trust, okay, I didn't even trust my own path because of like all these things, right? This went on and on and on. And, that's just one example, but that was very much a Kanna. That was a beautiful gift from Kanna. And, in terms of my integrations, usually I love to journal because there's this automatic writing. And I literally start with asking myself a question, or not even that. Sometimes I'll just be like, oh, I feel really tired today. Like whatever is present in my body. I start with that, and miraculously it'll start writing itself. And then I'll come to all kinds of, interesting conclusions and insights. So that's one way. And another way, especially after visiting Africa, because they're so connected with their ancestors, I started to every morning now also connect with my own ancestors, which really I had not even thought of before. I mean, I thought of them, of course, but it wasn't a practice, right? Like meditation would be a practice. I had a gratitude practice, but this was not a practice. And I think what I found is that when we start to connect to our own lineages, right, we start to remember we didn't just pop out of nowhere. And no matter how what kind of relationship you have with your parents, that's not the point. It's where did you come from? And when we start to connect with who and where we came from, it's very similar to the effect of when I mentioned earlier about going into the indigenous lands of certain plant medicines. You get codes and you start to really, something gets activated in you. And so when I create that space for integration or for prayer in the morning, connecting with my ancestors, I start to understand, wow, this is how I am connected to life itself. And when we can feel more connected to life, we don't go around being so automaton-like. We start to, appreciate the people around us, and it doesn't have to even be people, pets, animals, whatever it is, nature. And we start to really see what, unfortunately, our modern society leads us to forget, because they just want us to be addicted to the screens, right? And so this is real life, and this is life. It is alive versus something that's dead. So I think Kanna, which of course Ka and Empathogenics, our tagline is, first of all, feel yourself, and also, our mission is to restore full spectrum aliveness for all beings, and that's why we coined that line. We have that mission because that's what Kanna helps us remember. We already know this, but we've forgotten. So that's a big part of it.
That is beautiful. I must admit, this has been very encouraging for me personally, at least, just to hear your stories and the recent experience that you just shared there, and the vulnerability of that question of trust. I mean, I think, at least for me, this is why I do it. Is you kind of get to that level, and I think that's very, very fundamental for a lot of us humans. There's a lot of correlations that at least that I draw from that. And I think everybody else will as well. That's so cool. Yeah, I appreciate the vulnerability and the sharing today. Any other final words? From our side, again, we've been partnered with Stephanie and Ka Empathogenics here with Reality Sandwich, and all of our crew has tried the Kanna, the chews and the tincture that Stephanie and her team have, and just amazing heart and passion behind the products. And I think something that you mentioned as well, really comes through as far as actually on multiple levels. It comes through with your story with Bushman Pete. The idea that him saying, I'm not gonna, that animal wasn't healthy, I'm not going to put that in my body. And I think it's something that we don't think about enough, about what we're consuming, and right. You mentioned it could be our food, our medicine, content that we're consuming, if it's not done or procured in a hurtful manner, then, even that energy might get transferred through, and so,
yeah.
The Ka Empathogenics are, an amazing representation of the Kanna plant, and a daily way and routine of practicing, daily practice with that plant. So I appreciate what you do on that front as well. Any final words for the community?
Yeah, I would love for people to just try Kanna, even if you don't try our products. Of course, I would love for you guys to try our products, because we source the highest quality Kanna standardized kind of extract that is potent, and also we have our proprietary formulations that are patent pending, and there was a lot of love that went into all of these products, and we really were very intentional of making the products very clean. They're vegan, of course. There's non-GMO. There's not even preservatives, and that's very hard to accomplish. And when we made the chews, it's a heatless process that's very innovative and revolutionary. So that none of the plant ingredients have their bioactivity degraded. So it's and what you're taking in is really alive, and that's what we want people to feel. And, I just want to invite everyone just to try this plant, because she is just a beauty. and give her a chance, because it's a little bit different than maybe some of the other plants that are out there. I think the beauty of it also, though, is that it's something that you can incorporate. You can take it for work, which I do because it helps me focus and calms me down. Being a startup entrepreneur is very stressful. And, again, there's so many ways to work with it, like I mentioned before, but also like for meditation, it's great for calming the mind and like really centering and getting grounded. It's great for any kind of body work. Like most of the time when we go for a massage, we're so tense still. It takes us like half an hour sometimes just to relax enough for the masseuse or the body worker to help us, get into our muscles. Ka and Kanna are great for that as well. And, for working out, it's great for helping, like I said, with stamina endurance, and you'll see what it's like. And it's not at all, because there's no stimulants, like it's not stimulating the way caffeine is, but it gives you this grounded energy and calm and sort of mood lift at the same time. So it's really, really beautiful. And I do think that this is a medicine of our time. It's great we had the psychedelic renaissance, but psychedelics are not appropriate necessarily for everyone. And there are people who, let's say, maybe feeling trepidatious, like, oh, it's too much. I don't want to have a blowout experience. Isn't there something in between? And this is actually, Kanna is a beautiful kind of gateway plant medicine for you to feel into that field, the entheogenic field, and, be in that heart-centered love sort of vibration. Without having these hallucinations and feeling like losing track of space and time. And so, it's beautiful that way too. And I just want to invite everyone just to meet her, just to try. And I have so much respect for this plant, and I hope, other people do as well.
Beautiful.